Catherine O'Hara, A Quietly Brilliant Life and a Farewell. The world was never prepared. For some people have an enduring presence, as if they are a part of our emotional landscape as well as a generation. One of those exceptional people was Catherine O'Hara. Instead of a sudden dramatic break, her death was accompanied by a deep silence, the kind that occurs when long familiar laughter abruptly stops. It is challenging to discuss her passing, not because the details are confusing, but rather because of the unfathomable absence she leaves behind. Creativity, empathy, and an innate sense of human emotion defined Catherine O'Hara's life. She was an artist whose work demanded attention, even though her genius never did. The world is struggling not only with sadness, but also with the knowledge of how thoroughly she had woven herself into our collective memory after her death, which was apparently caused by a brief illness. This is more than just the account of her demise. It tells the tale of her life and the reasons it was significant. Some deaths come as a surprise, not because they happen suddenly, but rather because they happen quietly. The death of Catherine O'Hara falls under the category of silent endings, which leave an emptiness that speaks for itself rather than making an announcement with specifics or reasons. There has been a general silence in response to her death, which is thought to have followed a brief illness, as if everyone knows deep down that some losses necessitate silence before comprehension. Curiosity, timeframes, and medical certainty are frequently evoked by the term cause of death. However, in Catherine O'Hara's instance, the manner, private, contained, and in line with her way of life, seems more significant than the cause. She never shared details of her personal life with the public, and even after she passed away, this limit held true. Instead of a series of signs or phases, we are left with the emotional reality of her absence. Time is cruelly compressed by illness, especially when it is brief. It reminds us of how fast certainty may vanish by transforming what seemed permanent into something brittle. That reality is brought to light by Catherine O'Hara's passing, but it does so subtly, like a door closing silently. The loss seems out of proportion to the explanation to those who worked with her, loved her, or watched her grow up. And maybe that's because no explanation could ever seem adequate. When a life goes peacefully, there is a certain type of mourning that ensues. Unfinished talks, unanswered questions, and the persistent feeling that there could have been more time are all left behind. This type of sadness requires recognition rather than clarification. It challenges us to acknowledge that some endings defy narrative and to dwell with the unease of not knowing everything. The illness of Catherine O'Hara was not made public. It didn't turn into a protracted farewell or a show. Rather, it continued to be what disease so frequently is, very private, shared only with those closest to you, and handled with dignity rather than ostentation. This reticence seems almost radical in a culture that frequently demands transparency. It serves as a reminder that seclusion is a choice rather than an avoidance. As we start to consider her passing, it's critical to acknowledge that a person's existence is not defined by their cause. Even though illness was the last chapter of her life, it did not define who she was. Her warmth, intelligence, humor, and uncommon emotional authenticity left a lasting impression on everyone who came into contact with her work. Her legacy lies not in how she passed away, but rather in how she lived. The purpose of this introduction is not to provide an explanation for Catherine O'Hara's passing. It's an encouragement to handle it carefully, to celebrate the humanity of a lady whose life gave far more than it took, rather than giving in to the need for detail. Sometimes the most considerate way to deal with loss is to remember what was important, rather than trying to grasp everything. A life without the need for excess. Catherine O'Hara never made the kind of noise that people commonly associate with celebrity. She didn't depend on flamboyance to gain attention or pursue spectacle. Rather, she was strong when it came to timing, tone, and emotional intelligence. She knew that the most impactful performances are based on reality, regardless of whether she was being vulnerable or humorous. It was evident from the beginning of her career that O'Hara had a natural sense of character. She inhabited roles rather than acting them out. Her emotions were never forced, and her humor was never sloppy. Because she seemed genuine, relatable, and familiar, audiences trusted her. One of her greatest talents would be that familiarity. The various personas of a single talent. Catherine O'Hara transitioned between genres with ease during her career. Her repertoire included satire, comedy, drama, and poignant narrative. But no matter what part she played, There was always something identifiable about her. A warmth that smoothed jagged edges and an intelligence that elevated even the most basic lines. She had a unique talent at simultaneously making audiences laugh and cry. Her characters were frequently overly dramatic on the outside, but incredibly real on the inside. They were real people, not made-up characters. They were imperfect, loving, insecure, and resilient. Her signature was this duality. She reminded us that vulnerability does not weaken strength, and that laughter does not lessen seriousness. Being a mother is more than just a role. Many people will always think of Catherine O'Hara as a mother figure, not just because of the roles she played, but also because of how well she captured compassion, caring, and unwavering love. Her mother presence on television seemed natural rather than staged. She depicted mothers who were anxious, mothers who failed, mothers who gained knowledge, and mothers who, in spite of their flaws, loved intensely. Because they represented actual emotional effort rather than idealized fiction, these depictions struck a chord. O'Hara frequently provided a source of stability for the actors who collaborated with her, particularly the younger ones. She paid attention, she observed, she was reassuring without being patronizing. Long after the cameras had stopped filming, those who had known her in their early years continued to be influenced by her. A death that was too abrupt. When word leaked out about Catherine O'Hara's passing, it was said to be the consequence of a brief illness. There were no protracted narratives or public updates. In keeping with her lifestyle, her last chapter played out in silence. However, being brief does not mitigate the effects of loss. If anything, it makes it worse. Those who are left behind are forced to face the unsettling reality that even lives that seem enduring are susceptible to disruption due to the suddenness. Not because she was young, but rather because she seemed timeless, her passing was startling. She was simultaneously a part of the past, present, and future. It felt strange to think about a world without her. The delusion of time. The idea that there would be more time is possibly the most agonizing aspect of bereavement. More discussions, more shows, more private time spent with those who were important to each other. For many people, including co-workers, friends, audiences, and those who had grown up with her art, Catherine O'Hara's death destroyed that illusion. Her disappearance serves as a reminder that no amount of skill or affection can overcome mortality. However, her existence also serves as a reminder that purpose may be found in even the shortest amount of time. A private individual in a public setting, O'Hara had a very secluded life despite her notoriety. She didn't use vulnerability as a currency or provide too much personal information. This discretion was self-respect rather than secrecy. She realized that authenticity and mystery could coexist. That in order to be understood, an artist does not have to provide the public with every detail. In a field where boundaries are frequently blurred, she was able to preserve a sense of self outside of her profession thanks to this balancing. This privacy was maintained in death. There were few details. The emphasis remained on her life rather than the circumstances surrounding her death. Sadness. Beyond news articles. Following Catherine O'Hara's passing, the mourning has spread beyond official declarations. It has endured in recollections, memorials, and silent acknowledgments from others who felt influenced by her. Some lamented the passing of a cultural symbol. Others lamented a mother figure, a friend, or a mentor. Others lamented something harder to describe, the absence of a voice that added warmth, safety, and humanity to the world. The depth of her influence is demonstrated by her multifaceted mourning. She didn't exist in a single area. She simultaneously lived several lives. Why her life continues to speak. Catherine O'Hara's life was significant because of her connections rather than her accolades or longevity. She developed personalities that people found memorable. She created moments that served as emotional benchmarks. Her work feels almost subversive in its patience in a time when speed and spectacle are becoming more and more important. Silence was something she trusted. Subtlety was something she trusted. She had faith in the audience. Her performances will not only age well, but also profoundly thanks to these decisions. Legacy as existence rather than absence. Death frequently compels us to compile lists of our accomplishments and summarize our lives. However, Catherine O'Hara's legacy defies simplification. Rather of being quantified, her influence is felt. It resides in laughter that comes back out of nowhere, in scenes that are re-examined with fresh insight, in the silent acknowledgement of emotional reality. Her life serves as a reminder that true compassion creates an enduring impression, and that creativity does not have to shout to be heard. The woman who does the work. Catherine O'Hara was renowned for her compassion, humility, and emotional intelligence outside of her professional life. Regardless of status, she showed respect to everyone. Collaboration was more important to her than ego. These traits influenced the settings she worked in and the connections she made. They also influenced her reputation as a decent person rather than just a fantastic performer. That distinction is important. A farewell without resolution. A life like hers cannot have a satisfying conclusion. There are no words to express how much she meant to her loved ones. Unfinished discussions, silences, and questions are all left behind by her passing. However, thankfulness is also left behind. Thankfulness for a purposeful life, for work that made me chuckle and feel at ease, for times when, in a world that frequently seems fake, it seemed genuine. In this way, grief turns into an act of gratitude. What's left after her death? Even though Catherine O'Hara is no longer physically present, she is nonetheless present in many other ways. In reenacted performances, in the knowledge gained, in poignant recollections that unexpectedly come back. Her example shows us that visibility is not the only factor in influence. It has to do with sincerity, about being completely present, about genuinely caring without wanting to be acknowledged. These are the enduring legacies. A life worth recalling, remembering. Catherine O'Hara serves as a reminder of what art can be when it is grounded in humanity. It is to keep in mind that tenderness can be forceful and that laughter can coexist with profundity. Her passing serves as a reminder of loss. Her existence serves as a reminder of purpose, and her story goes on in that equilibrium between thankfulness and sadness.